Good afternoon. This is the meeting of the Police and Municipal Campus Building Committee, February 8th, 2021. And as a preliminary matter, this is Patrick Pitney, Chairman. Please permit me to confirm that all members and persons anticipated on the agenda are present and can hear me. Maurice DiPaolo.
Present.
Kristen Lass.
Present.
Keith Baldinger.
Present.
Kevin Anderson.
Present.
Justine Snyder.
Present.
Patrick Collins.
Present.
Joseph Morrow.
Present.
Staff, when I call your name, please respond in the affirmative. Kevin Mizikar.
He is not present today.
He is not here today. Angela Snell.
Present.
Hi, Angela. And Alex Martinez.
Present.
Anticipated speakers on the agenda. Please respond in the affirmative. Matt Salad.
Present.
Jeff McElravy.
Present.
Neil Joyce.
Neil's going to join later.
Okay, and Kevin Griffin.
Present.
Very good. Good afternoon. This open meeting of the Police and Municipal Campus Building Committee is being conducted remotely, consistent with Governor Baker's executive order of March 12, 2020, due to the current state of emergency in the Commonwealth due to the outbreak of the COVID-19 virus. The order, which you can find posted with agenda materials for this meeting, allows public bodies to meet entirely remotely, so long as reasonable public access is afforded so that the public can follow along with the deliberations of the meeting. Ensuring public access does not ensure public participation unless such participation is required by law. This meeting will not feature public comment. For this meeting, the Police and Municipal Campus Building Committee is convening by Google Hangouts as posted on the town's website, identifying how the public may join. We are now turning to the first item on the agenda. Before we do so, permit me to cover some ground rules for effective and clear conduct of our business and to ensure accurate meeting minutes. I will introduce each board member or staff member who has the lead role for the particular item or guest speaker associated with this item on the agenda. After they conclude their remarks, the chair will go down the line of members first and then to staff members, inviting each by name to provide any comment or questions. I will then call upon the members to offer a motion and then for a second. Please hold until your name is called. Further, please remember to mute and unmute your phone by pressing *6 or mute your computer when you are not speaking, as to not trigger your camera feed or background noise. If members wish to engage in conversation with other members, please do so through the chair, taking care to identify yourself. Finally, each vote taken in this meeting will be conducted by roll call vote. And that brings us to item 1. The meeting is now called to order. And item 2, we have the meeting minutes of January 11th, 2021. Any discussion, comments, motions?
Mr. Chairman, I move we approve the minutes of the January 11 meeting.
We have a motion to approve. Do we have a second?
Second.
Chief Anderson.
We have a motion. Thank you. We have a motion and a second to approve the meeting minutes of January 11th, 2021. When I call your name, please cast your vote. Mo DiPaolo.
Aye.
Kristen Lass. Keith Baldinger.
Aye.
Kevin Anderson.
Aye.
Justine Snyder.
Aye.
Patrick Collins.
Aye.
Joseph Morrow.
Aye.
And myself, aye. Minutes are approved 8-0. Thank you. Let's see, item 3, we have no bills or warrants this time, so that's nice. Okay, so we'll move on to item 4. We're going to hear from the owner's project manager. And Neil, I'm not sure, Neil or Kevin, who's covering this?
Kevin.
Okay, Kevin, floor is yours.
I believe Matt has a PowerPoint presentation. I don't know if Matt wants to put it up.
Okay.
Just before you start, Kevin, I just want to make one quick note. So we have three main topics to cover between the architect and the OPM's update, starting with the OPM update. We then have a discussion on the HVAC system selection, and that will be run by our mechanical engineer from CES, Brad Park, who's on. And then we'll give our design update and go through some of the progress and milestones we've had over the past month. And joining us tonight from Tecton is our project designer, Tyler Oshevsky. So he'll jump in and assist me with presenting some of that. So Kevin, just let me know when you want me to change slides.
Okay. So as you all remember, on the 24th, we submitted our application to the OIG for CM at risk. And then it was received. One question we had was, were they going to review it within the time that we submitted it, or that they confirmed they did it within the time that we submitted it? So since then, on January 19th, we received notice that we have approval to proceed with the CM at risk delivery method from the OIG's office. Matt, next slide, please. We solicited during that time that we were waiting, and also in that time, I think we brought to everybody's attention there were 9 responses from very reputable companies. And then since the 9th, we ranked the respondents and we got them into a short list. So we met last week. We got down to 4 firms: Commodore Builders, Fontaine Builders, and W.T. Rich and Daniel O'Connell. All 4 have said that they are going to submit a proposal. Matt, if you go to the next slide. So we issued an RFP, which is for technical pricing proposals. So it includes all their general conditions and soft costs, like kind of their upfront costs and their fee. And then once we receive those in, they're due on the 18th. We can then review those, and we're already going to interview those 4 firms. So once we have the RFP, we can kind of know who's charging what, and we can balance that into the 4 firms that we've already shortlisted. And then we do our interviews, and from there we'll make basically a recommendation that says, this is our top firm, 2nd, 3rd, 4th, and we can proceed with trying to negotiate with the top selected firm. And as you can see here, we're going to start interviewing the 25th and 26th of this month. By the 1st, we're anticipating having a selection. And as soon as they're on board, we're going to bring them on to do our pre-construction services, which is what kind of the whole purpose of doing CM at risk is, so that they can weigh in on this project from the beginning and help kind of give their value to how to build buildings, maybe in a better way, and help the architect with understanding how a contractor is looking at their plans and provide insight.
Mr. Chair, can I
take any
jump in a second? Mr. Pitney, could I ask a question?
Yes, you can. I'm sorry, I was muted.
Sure. That's okay. So we have a held meeting for this committee on February 22nd. We should talk if we should continue to have that meeting on the 22nd as well as a meeting on March 1st, because this committee will ultimately have to do the CM selection based upon the recommendation of the subcommittee.
Sure. Yeah, I had the same thoughts as I saw the timeline coming up. So I guess when we get to the scheduling of the meetings, we can talk about that at that time, unless you think that's something we should do now. Do we see a need for the February 22nd meeting? We've got a hold on that right now.
Pat, what I remembered was I think that we were holding that spot because Jeff couldn't attend this meeting, I think, is what we all were going for this date. And I think Jeff was the only holdout that said that he couldn't make it to the 8th. And we said, all right, we'll do our full meeting on the 22nd. But it looks like we're doing our full meeting tonight anyways. So yeah, if you guys want to bump it to the 1st, there's nothing on the OPM side that we need for the CM selection process until we rank the finalists.
Yeah, that seems to make sense. Anybody who thinks that's not a good idea? Okay, so we'll plan on that then when we get to that part of the meeting. Thank you, Kristen.
And Mr. Pitney,
Yes.
Jeff actually can't make tonight's meeting. He'll be jumping off here in a little bit, but I have confidence in the team and the agenda to carry forward.
Okay.
Oh, Jeff, you are there. One thing that I did not point out was that we did receive the draft contract. That is not in our timeline here, but we have the draft contract back from town council, and I believe Neil and Kristen and the town council have a phone call scheduled for tomorrow to try to finalize that process.
Yes, that is correct.
Okay, very good. So where are we? So now we're just at this point. Then it's just a matter of waiting on the interviews and your recommendation. Then once we have that contract.
Yeah. So we're gonna get the RFPs in. That's prior to the interviews, and we're gonna go through those as well. That will ultimately have an effect on the final grading as well. So their price, along with their technical presentation of the project, will ultimately decide who is recommended as the top firm.
Okay, and my presumption is, and correct me if I'm wrong, that the subcommittee will be reviewing all this material and not only the proposals but the responses.
They've already reviewed the responses and they've ranked the firms, which is how we got to the short list. Now, since we have a short list, we ask for the RFP, which is for proposals, right. And then they'll review that as well as sitting in on the interviews, and then ultimately providing a final ranking to the larger committee.
Excellent. All right. Very good. Anybody else with anything?
That's it for our little update just on the CM selection.
Okay. Any questions out there? There being none, thank you, Tyler. So where does that? So now we've got. So that was the CM selection. So we still have the architect report.
Yep. Yeah, so we have two more items to cover here. So the first one, before we get to the architect's update, we're gonna look at some HVAC systems. Early on, we like to look at the mechanical system for it because it has sort of the biggest impact on the design going forward. So since we last met, we've had a series of meetings between our mechanical engineers, the town, and Selco to discuss various options. We've put together some information that Brad Park from CES, the project manager for the MEP firm, will present these options, and we can have any discussion related to them following the presentation. So Brad, I'll turn it over to you.
Thanks, Matt. So good evening, everyone. As Matt said, my name is Brad Park with CES. I'm a project manager and senior mechanical engineer. And just to reiterate what Matt said, we've had some various conversations. We've included Chris Roy from Selco. Shrewsbury has kind of a unique instance here where they have a municipal electric and lighting department, which has some impacts on what the life cycle cost might be of certain systems. So we've had some good conversations, and we've met a couple times to try to narrow down and steer the boat here. So Matt, if you go to the next slide here. Essentially what we've done is, it's a little over, a lot of data here, but I'll try to be, very high level here and just kind of talk through how we ended up with the options we had here. So going back to those conversations with Selco, and also just a general trend of the industry and push has been for what we call strategic electrification, where we're trying to remove fossil fuels where we're able to. Massachusetts has been one of the, probably one of the states that's led the push for this. So we're seeing this quite a bit now. And then having having a municipal electric department also kind of plays into this, because there's also some additional advantage here with your electrical rates. So what we did is we took a few different options here, and option one would be if you asked me today what is the if we were able to allow fossil fuels in a building, what would we be putting in the building? So option one is kind of our baseline, what our typical design would be without getting rid of the fossil fuels. So in this design, we have kind of a traditional boiler hot water system to provide perimeter heat around the building. So this means you have some hot water piping, you have baseboard heat or radiant ceiling panels in various rooms to provide heat. And then for air conditioning, we use variable refrigerant flow, which some of you have probably heard of, called VRF for short. And basically this is having a series of air conditioning units installed throughout the building, connected to a series of condensing units located on the roof. So the nice things about this is that, it's very comfortable in the wintertime, low energy cost. Really the only drawback here is we're using fossil fuels as our primary heat source. So then we looked at, well, what could we do if we wanted to eliminate the fossil fuels? So police stations are very unique to this. If you had an office building, it'd be a lot simpler, but a police station has a lot of unique spaces, such as cell blocks and a sally port and a garage and lots of storage areas. So it makes the all-electric version play out a little bit differently than if it was a more conventional office type space. So in this option, we're now using the VRF system to provide the primary heat source throughout the common areas and office type spaces. So these units are capable of heating, and they are capable of heating throughout the wintertime, even down to temperatures below zero. So we're confident in its ability to provide heat. The drawback is then how you handle spaces that wouldn't typically have air conditioning. So again, going back to that garage, that sally port, you're looking at using something more like an electric unit heater. The drawback to this is even with Shrewsbury's reduced electrical rates, we still end up with a higher utility cost because of the fact that we're using strictly electric heat for a lot of these spaces. So the upside to this is a lower first cost because we've eliminated that hot water piping and that perimeter heat. The downsides to it, occupant comfort isn't quite what it would be with having hot water heat. It's still good. People are going to be comfortable, but nothing really beats hot water heat. And then again, going back to police stations being unique here, we're looking to back up the entire building on generator. So if you're heating with electrical means, you can imagine that makes the generator a lot larger. So that's a drawback. So I'm going to skip option 3 for a second because that's kind of one we developed as we went through this process, and go to option 4. So obviously a lot of you have probably heard the term geothermal before. And so we want to look at it to at least evaluate it and give the, give the town an idea of what that option might mean for this building. So in this instance, we're using the ground as a heat sink and a heat source in the wintertime. Geothermal is incredibly efficient, but it's also incredibly expensive. So that's where you're seeing some of the drawbacks of the higher first cost. But it is an all-electric design. We would be eliminating the fossil fuels completely in this design. It's just really trying to absorb that upfront cost of drilling vertical wells for a geothermal field. So after going back and forth, what we kind of we developed option 3 here, which we're calling a hybrid approach. So in this instance, we're still using the VRF to provide the primary heating throughout all of the office, lobby spaces, dispatch, all of those type spaces. But we're going to install a small hot water system to provide a little bit of hot water that we could use for the garages, for areas that are only storage type areas. And then also we now have gas in the building. We could produce our domestic hot water with as well for the showers and sinks and things of that nature. So this one is kind of a nice balance between option 1 and 2. We have a small amount of fossil fuel in the building, but it's a very efficient system, and it's kind of a good balance between those first 2 options. So that, that's kind of where we went with these. Matt, if you go to the next slide.
Just before I flip it, one other point to make, Brad, that you didn't note there is that option 3 in the future, depending on how gas rates go, it can easily be converted to an all-electric system down the road?
Sure. So I will touch on that quickly. We're starting to see some technologies out there where we can look at using heat pumps to produce hot water. The technology is a little bit limited right now. It's popular in Europe, but there's not a lot of availability in the States yet. So we're not quite comfortable yet incorporating it, especially into a public project where you have municipal bidding laws to work against. But 10 years down the road, that technology is probably there. And it's something that could be converted down the road to produce hot water with an all-electric means. So then, obviously for Keith and some of the facilities department, we look at, what major components requiring maintenance. So we're looking at maintenance against these different options and how that might play into making the decision here. So option 1 and option 3 are very similar. In option 3, like I've said, we still have a hot water system, even though it's smaller and only doing a specific portion of the building. The maintenance is more or less, you have to maintain the VRF system. You still have ventilation equipment on the roof. So where it says DX DOAS units, a DOAS unit is a dedicated outdoor air system, which would be using to provide ventilation to the building. That's pretty consistent across all options, which is why I haven't dove into it in a lot of detail yet. But in option 1 and option 3, you're looking at very similar maintenance. Option 2, with the all-electric version, you've, again, completely removed the hot water system from the building. So you've reduced a little bit of maintenance there. However, your VRF system is operating more hours per year, so you might be losing some longevity of the system. So instead of it lasting 20 years, it might last 15 years because it has to operate more. So a little bit less maintenance, but maybe it has to occur more frequently. And then option 4, with a geothermal system, there is some additional maintenance. You have an extra set of pumps that have to pump water through the ground. The equipment inside the building can be a little bit more complicated to interface with that geothermal system. So option 4, we would consider having the highest maintenance with that system. So I think you can go to the next one, Matt. And then this is kind of the big summary here. So as you can see, we've kind of outlined, and you can kind of tell the way I'm talking that, the VRF option 3 hybrid option is really where we've leaned after a back and forth with the working group on Thursdays, and just with working with the design team's professional opinion as well. So there is some cost differences between these systems. The all-electric system, again, is the cheapest. Options 1 and 3 are a little bit more, but we're not talking any substantial costs. And I'll say this off the top, that whether it's option 1, 2, or 3, we're comfortable that we can get any of those 3 options in the project on budget. So the first cost isn't a real critical item with those. Geothermal is where the first cost is really an issue. So again, drilling all those wells externally, 30% more. You're looking at something around the roughly $800,000 to install that system. As you guys can imagine, that's something that's very difficult to absorb in a project. It does have a payback, but it's a pretty long payback. So it just makes it tough to get into these projects. And again, that just goes back to the fact that, fossil fuels are still pretty cheap. And even if that changes in the future, it'd have to change quite a bit. So energy usage wise, again, option 1, 2, and 3 are very close. Geothermal still being the lowest. And then energy costs. So you see where that line item there doesn't quite jive with energy use. And that comes down to, again, the fact that gas is much cheaper than electricity right now. So you can tell in option 1, we're doing all of our heating with natural gas. So our energy is less than option 2. Our energy cost is less than options 2 and 3. Option 2, you're doing all of your heat with electricity. So your energy cost is the most. And then as you guys can kind of figure, with a hybrid being in between, the energy cost is right in between those. Jumping down to maintenance costs, again, these systems are fairly similar, so there's a little bit less maintenance with option 2, but overall they're pretty close. Reliability, we knocked option 2 all electric a little bit on the reliability scale, because again, you're relying on one system to provide your cooling and heating all throughout the year, so it has to operate more hours per year. Whereas with option 1, you have a heating system and a cooling system that are separate. So if, each of those works half the year, more or less. And again, option 3 has a little bit of a balance there as well. The payback is in basically assuming option 2, the all electric design, is the least expensive to install, but it uses more energy. So there's some payback to overcome with options 1 and 3. But that's really, again, kind of the way it's laying out is that, options 1 and 3 are similar, but we've eliminated a lot of the fossil fuels in the building, which is why, CES is recommending that. And I think the subcommittee we talked with on Thursday is generally in alignment with that option. So, we're just kind of presenting where we've come to, and it's been good to meet with the committee on Thursdays, because that's how we developed option 3. It's how we've come to where we're at through some really good discussions. So, with that, I know it's kind of a lot of information, a lot of numbers on the screen. But if anybody has any questions, comments, concerns, I'm more than willing to talk about it.
Okay, any questions out there?
Mr. Chairman, not a question, but I have some comments.
Sure, Keith, go ahead.
We've spent a fair amount of time on these options over a couple of weeks. And I think a couple of things that we might want to point out, one of the drivers is comfort in the building too. And I think Brad, I don't know if Brad called it or not, but option 2 makes it a little bit more difficult to heat. And then one of the things that we discussed too was domestic hot water. Creating domestic hot water with electricity is very difficult. It costs a lot of money, and we have a very slow, takes a long time for an electric hot water heater to build up hot water as opposed to a natural gas fired one, which is almost instant. So that was one big driver with the locker rooms and showers and stuff like that, creating hot water. And the nice thing for 1, 2, and 3 is that service and maintenance vendors are readily available for all of those. Very easy to get them repaired. Option 1 and 3 are basically the same system. It's just one has more electric, one has more gas use. So from the public buildings point of view, it makes it simple for us to maintain and operate that over the long run.
So Keith, I'm going to follow up on that. So are you saying that the maintenance of these units would be outsourced, or they'd be done in-house?
Well, right now, with the way our staffing is, we do minor stuff in-house, and any major repairs, we have to call in a vendor, or if it's something electronic, we have to call in a vendor. That wouldn't change for it wouldn't really change the way we operate. It's just those first 3 options. We have a lot of availability of people we can call. We're not whereas geothermal, we'd be stuck with 1 or 2 vendors probably.
Sure.
Who we could use, and nothing that's here is for lack of a better word, new. The system's been around for a while, so we can find, diagnosing them is fairly simple, or the people are available to diagnose them for us.
Okay, and so would this be a matter of, say, signing a service contract with the appropriate people, like an annual contract, kind of like we do with our home boilers, or does it work differently?
We do some of that with a couple of our buildings. For a new building, I would probably do that for the first few years for sure. It seems to work out in a couple other places, so that trend is somewhat new for our division, but that's the direction we're going.
Okay, and I just have one last question. Could you just talk a little bit about the lifespan of the various systems? Are we talking, it says payback in 10 years. Does it have a 20-year lifespan, or 30, or 50, or?
Sure. So we would consider the VRF system to have a 20-year lifespan would be what we'd expect. Obviously, it can always vary a little bit, but That's the expectation anyway. Boilers should last 20 to 30 years. So you're talking 20 to 30 years.
Okay. Thank you. Anybody else?
Mr. Chairman,
Mo, go ahead.
a couple of comments. Experience dealing with commercial office space. I would say if you were staying conventional, yes, I would agree with number one. I think option 3 makes a lot more sense. Just because of the savings and the variability in it. I think it's important to have perimeter baseboard heat for comfort in the winter. Geothermal, I have a lot of experience with because of the office complex that I had worked in, and I'm glad we're staying away from it. It is a lot more expensive to install. I think the maintenance cost that's being projected is extremely low based on experience. The ability, I think 3 is being generous. So from my experiences, I would go with either number 1 or 3, but I think 3 a lot more sense looking to the future. So for what it's worth, my experience is the geothermal is not the way to go. And looking to the future, I would say option 3 is probably the better way to go. Looking to the future.
Okay. Very good. Thanks, Mo.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes.
I concur with or that the option 1 is usually traditional for a commercial building and for the reasons he said, but I like option 3 because we're talking about our police station, and we cannot, if it's all electric, if electric's out, they're shut down. They're incapacitated. And also with the geothermal, which has, can have glitches, and they're not easy glitches and not easy to fix. I think hybrid 3 is the best choice, even given the building, what we're using it for.
Thanks, Justine. That's a great point. Chief, any thoughts on your end?
Yeah, no, I like option 3 as well. We went over it extensively, and that seems like the best choice. I like the fact that as the equipment improves over the years, we might be able to, go from hybrid to less of a relying on fossil fuels. So I like option 3.
Okay, very good. Kristen, is this anything that we have to approve or vote on today?
We don't have to necessarily vote, but we do need to give the designers that we're comfortable with moving this direction. We did, with our short working committee, did recommend Keith, myself, Chief Anderson, and the working committee that option 3 would be the best, and we'd like the okay from the building committee to proceed in this fashion so the designers can further refine their work in this model.
Okay, so since a formal vote is not required, I'm very comfortable with option 3. What I would say is if there's anybody who's not comfortable with option 3, speak now or forever hold your peace. And if not, we'll just proceed in that direction.
I do think it was presented very well for us to make that kind of decision. No, thank you for that.
Welcome.
All right, I'm not hearing anybody against. Okay, very good.
Okay. Moving on to the last piece of this presentation, the architect's update. So these were the bullet points that we had at the end of last month's presentation about the different pieces that were starting to move forward. And the first one being that the engineers had been kicked off and were moving forward. And you saw a piece of that just now with the HVAC system selection. Structural systems are being developed and have been selected. So we're using a combination of steel and masonry bearing walls, depending on the space and the spans and what makes economical sense. So those are moving forward. And the civil and landscape plans are proceeding right now. We're starting to set up some preliminary meetings with planning and the Conservation Commission. So those are moving forward, which is good to have those early conversations, because the approvals through those committees sometimes can take a while. So we want to make sure that we're on top of that. We've started meeting between the town and the engineers. So we've had many meetings in our working group. In some of those results you saw just now. Geotech, the drillers were on site January 13th and January 14th, and we just, as of the end of last week, received the preliminary report. So that'll be going out as needed. Preliminary results show that we have good bearing soil, and also that the water table was relatively low. The site right now is a few feet below what is going to be final grade, because it does drop off at the back of the police parking lot currently. So it'll be coming up, and I believe the water table was somewhere between 6 and 8 feet below the existing grade. So at the end of the day, we'll be about 10 feet above that water table. So that's great news, and that'll be good for the building going forward. And then we've continued to evolve the design and bring in some more detail and refine the exterior elevations, as well as the adjacent site, and we'll show you some of that today. We've also gone through with the working group and selected an envelope system for the building. So we're going to use predominantly a closed cell spray foam insulation system. So this gives us the highest R value per inch that we can get. And it also combines a few of the different building systems into a single material. So we don't need a separate insulation system and air vapor barrier. This all sort of acts all together in one, and really creates a more continuous envelope around the building. So by starting with a nice tight envelope and a good insulating value, we can reduce the size of our HVAC system and save some money there. So we're actually looking at a higher R value because of the system than we'd be able to get with anything else, and beyond what is required by the code, both the Energy Conservation Code and the stretch code requirements in Massachusetts. One thing that you may know or may not know is that the spraying of the closed cell spray foam insulation involves an aerosol spray its blowing agent is highly toxic. And we've developed a spec recently that uses just compressed CO2 as the primary blowing agent, so it eliminates any of those greenhouse gas emitting and toxic fumes. Also allows us to reduce the cost of labor by doing that, because what happens with the traditional spray insulation is you're only able to spray a couple of inches per application, because there's a hydrothermic reaction, and if you spray too much at a time, that built up heat can actually cause an ignition. So this eliminates that risk by using a non-aerosol blowing agent. So that's the system we're going to be using going forward. We've also started looking at some of the roofing systems. It seems like it's the preferred method to go with EPDM roofing system for the flat roofs. This is sort of tried and true. It's been used for 40, 50 years. So we're going to continue with that. And it has a long lifespan and is easily repairable within the town. So it's good tried and true system. And for the sloped roofing, we're actually looking at not using asphalt shingles, because we want to go with something that has a little more of a lifespan to it and gives a little bit more value over the life of the building. So we're actually looking at a material that has a shingle look but is actually metal. So it's an interlocking metal shingle. And the bottom right is a couple of examples of what that can look like. It can have sort of a traditional asphalt shingle look. And it can also look sort of like slate tiles. Option on the right is more of your traditional tile look, and the one on the left is sort of an elongated slate roofing look. So More to come on that. We're getting some samples pulled together that we'll be able to share. But this will give that traditional look and fit with the campus while also giving a little bit more robustness to the roofing envelope system and longevity. So just want to briefly touch on a couple of plan updates that we've been going through as we've been moving through this past month and really refining the plan and getting ready for design development. On the ground floor, this is sort of the south portion of the building, what we're calling Area A. We've really just been filling in the details, getting some of that casework brought in, working through some of the interior design of some of these spaces. We are currently working through some design revisions to the dispatch area to try to get some more flexibility in the potential for future regionalization of dispatch and the ability to get more workstations in there, whether it's now or in the future. So more to come on this. We should have some updates to that for the next meeting. Area B, we have had some changes in working with the department and the working group. Some small pieces of it is we've reshuffled some of the garage components to get a maintenance storage garage. So this will have lawnmower, snow blower, things like that that are going to be dealing with site maintenance around the building. We've also added a small bay that could be dedicated to vehicle maintenance where we may include a vehicle lift. In the fitness area, we're starting to refine how some of this is going to be working, including one of the program elements that we were developing is the firearms and de-escalation training simulator. So we're actually dedicating a space to that. That's basically an immersive 3D environment that uses projectors and screens and an instructor to really simulate live scenarios that you would experience out in the field. And it really helps bring the department into the 21st century of policing. So this is a modern technology that we're starting to incorporate in a lot more of these facilities. We'll be bringing some of that information to the committee as it develops. To the Sally Port, we've added a bulk property room, which would be an expansion of evidence. So when they're bringing in bikes and things like that, it doesn't necessarily need to be in the main evidence storage area. They'd be able to have that bulk property stored out here. We've also added a decontamination shower for detainees and also for EMS and officers as they're coming through the Sally Port and need to decontaminate some sort of for whatever reason. There's various reasons for that. And we further developed the prisoner processing area. Previously, we had just 2 booking desks in the holding cells. We further developed it to have a dedicated mugshot area. So this is when you're going through the intake process where you'd be fingerprinted and your mugshot photo would be taken. That happens here. And we've added an intox area. So that's where you would do your breath test and things like that. So these are dedicated areas where pieces of equipment would be housed and those tests would be administered. And we've also added a couple of doors to the booking area just to give the officers, in case there's a combative detainee, the ability to close themselves off and have another layer of security for safety. On the second floor, again, just further refinement and detailing. One piece we've been really working through, actually, let me go back. One piece we've really been working through on the plan, sorry, is the training room, because we're depressing down and doing the raised seating here, getting handicap accessibility to both the presentation area as well as the upper seats, and getting that flow with ramps and stairs and everything that happens here in security is there's a lot of pieces to the puzzle to really juggle here. So that's one of the areas of development that we're really pushing through at the moment. Other than that, nothing else has changed on the second floor. Just a little bit more development going on in the mechanical areas. And now that we have our system selection, this will start to get refined and detailed as we move forward. So a little bit on the design, we've progressed. Just as a reminder of where we've come, this was the exterior perspective that was presented at town meeting in the fall. We then further developed that for the previous building committee meeting in January, and this is where we sort of got away from that sort of white trim and more brick detailing around some of the larger windows and entry. We've received some comments on this, and we've wanted to sort of refine this a little bit further and balance the fenestration, the windows and openings with some of the interior spaces. And so we've had many, many design meetings on the building facade and incorporating that with the way that the site plan was starting to develop. And so we've moved a little bit deeper into our refinement, and I'm gonna stop talking for once and turn it over to Tyler, who is going to walk us through the latest design iteration. And once we go through these slides here, which includes the study comparison that we've brought back of comparing this massing on site, we're actually going to go into a live 3D walkthrough that we can go around and sort of see all the different components as they come together live. So that'll be a new thing that we'll start doing more often with this committee. Tyler?
Thanks, Matt. If you could actually go back to the previous slide quickly. So looking at this old iteration that we shown you about a month ago, there was a few things that weren't quite working as well as we would like. And the biggest one is hierarchy. Having a clear sequence of hierarchy is definitely really important when you're when the architecture is more on the traditional style or traditional design. And the wings on either end of the main entry felt really heavy and tall. So we needed to think of a way to kind of lessen the scale of those, so you have more of a hierarchy of that main entrance in the center, and the wings can be smaller and not as pronounced, and complement the entry. We also realized that some of the brick detailing we were doing in here, in concept, it might ideally those stepped brick surrounds would provide some contrast between the main entry and the flat brick walls. But when we looked into it further with rendering, it wasn't providing that contrast that we wanted. So if you can go to the next slide, we attempted to start to resolve some of those issues. And first, you can see on the wings on either side of the entry, there's a horizontal band at the top. It looks like darker brick from this rendering, but as I'll show you in the 3D walkthrough, and I'll show it a little bit closer, but that's actually a revealed brick. So every layer of brick is inset about 3/4 of an inch, every other layer, to create a textured effect that helps break up the two wings on either side of the entry, to really emphasize the center of the building rather than that whole elevation. We also changed the brick stepped surrounds to a precast concrete surround that added a little bit better contrast between the brick and then the entry. And it's also a little bit sleeker, a little bit slightly more modern, but I think it complements this building and the rest of the buildings a lot nicer, especially because there's a few precast elements on the town hall as well. We also added a bit more detail into the windows. We added some brick detailing at the sill and the head, as well as some thicker and slightly deeper mullion and vertical fenestrations as well. Also on both the wings, you can see, actually, Matt, if you can go back to the previous slide. The brick surrounds went full height on either side of on each wing. And on the new design option, we brought that down to a single story height, again, to create a better layering of hierarchy between the entry and the two wings of the building. We also started to develop the site a little bit more. As you can see, I'll explain that a little bit more in the 3D model. But we added some planters in the front entry, along the perimeter of the building, and we developed the plaza in this image on the right-hand side of the building. But again, I'll get into that further in a 3D walkthrough. So these are a couple of site comparison elevations. The top one, you're looking at the main entry elevation of the town hall on the right and the new police station on the left. And as you can see, the floor-to-floor height of the new police station is definitely higher than the town hall, but the overall height of the building, they're actually pretty similar. And so I think that if there's any fear that the scale of this building is much larger than the town hall, I think that this shows that it's working quite nicely.
And it also should be pointed out too that, well, the one thing we're not showing here is there's a little more detail that actually makes this a little taller, but the police station is going to be sort of set back as well, so it'll appear lower as you're coming around the site because of that.
Right, and then the bottom elevation is a site elevation looking from Maple Ave at all of the buildings on campus. Yeah, so I guess, oh yeah, there's the aerial. So like I said before, we started to add some more detail into the landscaping with some of the planters in the front entry and along the perimeter of the building. We also added some more detail into the plaza that will act as a bit of a break area for the police officers and staff of this building, but also as a spill out space for any event that's going on in the training room that's right at the lower floor of that wing there. If you look up to the kind of top left area of this image, we started to develop a community outreach landscape grove area where it runs along Maple Ave. But it's a way to start bringing the community in a little bit closer to this police station and create a nice interaction relationship between the people of Shrewsbury and the officers that work here. But there's a great opportunity to get some community involvement and outreach into this area with picnic tables and benches and just casual outdoor space.
So I'm going to stop sharing. Tyler, do you want to pick up the screen share?
Sure.
Matt, before you do that, could you just go back for 1 second? I'm just curious where the radio tower is positioned on the site relative to that last picture.
Sure. Yeah. Is it back up for you guys?
Yeah.
Somewhere in these areas to the moment.
Could you repeat that? You kind of broke up coming through.
Oh, I'm sorry. Somewhere in this area here. It's environment, but it's the back right.
Okay, thank you.
All right, can everyone see my screen?
Yep, we can.
Awesome. So right now, you're looking at the front entry of the building. I'll just kind of walk you forward a little bit more to see this in a little bit better detail. But as you can see in the top band there, that's that revealed brick that I was talking about. Again, the precast surrounds here, adding more detail with the landscaping. I'll walk you around to the plaza area. But we've also identified a nice location for a police officer memorial that we might want on this campus, and that's right here right in front of the outdoor plaza area. And we're still working through the design of this plaza. We might have some more integrated landscape features and some step seating as well. But this is just to give you an idea of how the size of that space and how it might work. We also have this planter wall here to separate this the plaza from the prisoner release area here, so that way those areas are visually separate and disconnected. I'm going to actually go to more of an aerial view so you can get a better sense of the whole site.
As he's pulling back here, one thing you will notice is the area over the fitness room, just below where his cursor is, has popped up a little bit higher than the rest of the roofs. We've increased that volume a little bit and added clear story windows around that. So I think it's a great opportunity to get some natural light into that space because it's so deep and large.
Right. We've also simplified the roofs a little bit on this 2-story volume to get all of the roof lines to clean up and work nicely together.
We've also added, we've been going back and forth on the various ways we've been treating the top of the front entry roof. And we've sort of settled on this clear story kind of cupola design that sort of nods back to the town hall, but has its sort of own identity. And the nice thing with this is it's right above the middle of the Detectives Bureau, which again is one of those really large, open, deep spaces. And we're able to take advantage of that natural light and filtering it down into the space itself. So we're actually going to be building that out of all structural steel and having it open all the way up to the ceiling. So that'll be a nice, large, open space.
Right. So the back portion of the building, where it's all 1-story, we simplified the roofs there as well and left them all as flat roofs with a parapet. And that, I feel, helps provide, again, a little bit more hierarchy to this main portion of the building here, and lets the back of house section of the building like fade a little bit to the background, not be as much up front. You can see we also carried some of the brick reveal work that I was showing on the upper level of the main volume to a couple areas around the rest of the building to help tie that element around and help break up some of the brick facades. So you can see it a little bit down here where my cursor is around the garage, the sally port doors. If I continue around, it's a little bit hard to see from this angle, but in these recessed vertical spaces here on either side of the fitness center, there's the revealed brick there as well. And we also have it wrapping around the lower portion of this corner too.
So while he's going around, I'd be happy to open it up to any questions or comments.
What do we got out there? I can just looking at this and this rendering. I have to say I'm very happy with the precast look of it. I think it's much more traditional New England type of look and ties in so much better with Town Hall. And actually, I think it actually brings the scale down a little bit too. So without the vertical, having more of the horizontal lessens the scale. So I really like it. Anybody? Questions?
Mr. Chairman?
Please.
I agree with you. The design, I think it got to where we wanted to go. It still has a little bit of a contemporary feel, but it looks more inviting, and it certainly blends in more with the other two buildings. I like it much better than the January design. I think it's much more inviting. I think great job. I think we're there. I mean, there might be some tweaks, but I think we're there.
I agree. Anybody else?
Could you ask another question?
Stunning.
Sure, Mr. Collins.
Is there a way to show the roadway parking lot kind of intersection with the town hall entranceway? Like if you zoom out a little bit or to the east?
Yeah, I can. So I'll zoom out a little bit. This is also the site model is a progress model, so I don't know if everything is 100% accurate on the areas that aren't directly connected to the building. But
There we go.
Matt, feel free to comment if there's anything that's a little bit off.
We're just missing a piece of the town hall. We cut that off.
Yeah, so that was.
It's in preparation of the two-story addition.
Yeah, so we actually modeled the two-story addition a while ago, and then had to quickly do a new rendering without the two-story, and the quickest way to do it was just to delete the back part of the building.
Okay.
So
I would point out one quick thing on this site aerial is some going back and forth with the civil engineer and really refining our setbacks with the wetlands that are to the north of the site. We're actually going to be probably pushing the building as a whole a few more feet back to the west. So it'll have slightly more breathing room off of town hall as well than it currently has.
the entranceway that is shown there from Maple Ave, that's a new one basically, and you're grassing over the existing one?
That's correct.
Okay. And I know there's a Soldiers Memorial there right now in the corner. Is that being moved over to that other area that you've kind of designed?
We're aware of it, but that hasn't been discussed, and I wouldn't think so. But it's something that our landscape architect is aware of, and that they're going to start to consider how that sort of relates into the design of ours. So we're looking at it. We're going to be looking at it holistically.
Okay. Thank you.
Matt, from a structural standpoint, could you just talk about water and rain and snow and things like that, the runoff and the, with a flat roof, snow is always a danger.
Yep. Yeah. So most of the flat roofs are going to be internally drained into a stormwater collection system. The rainwater on site is going to be collected in a number of bioretention basins or swales with rain gardens in them. And depending on how the stormwater calculations play out, we'll probably have some detention underneath some of the parking areas. So we'll have actual that kind of look like like a septic system, but those will go underneath some of the parking areas to collect some of that stormwater and allow it to filter back into the soil. Snow on the sloped roofs is always going to be a concern because they're metal, and snow and ice falling off of that onto the public way is always going to be an issue. So we're going to have some snow barriers in the way of snow fencing and ice tabs. So we're going to use a combination of those systems to make sure nothing's sliding off the roof. But we are looking at how we do always look at how the snow drifting on the roof is going to work out. So those clear story windows in the back of the fitness room, if we're thinking that that's going to be an issue for the way that snow drifting is going to pile up against that, then we'll probably end up taking those out. But snow tends to drift from the north to the south and from the east to the west in New England. So that's something that we'll be looking at and making sure isn't going to be an issue. But the roof is designed for worst case scenario snow load plus a safety factor because it's a police station. We have enhanced structural requirements. So we will be covered with that. Because of the way that the site is organized as well, we have a lot of good perimeter to our new parking lots. So the movement of snow from plows and things like that off the site is also going to be pretty simple for our snow areas. So.
Okay. All right. Pardon my ignorance. I'm just having trouble. I don't see any, in my own house, I've got gutters, I've got downspouts, I've got collection areas. How does that work?
Yeah. So the sloped roofs will drain down into gutters and then downspouts, which we aren't showing just yet.
Okay.
And the flat roofs the flat roofs are pitched to drains, then they'll have internal drains within the building.
Okay. All right.
Mr. Chairman, if I may.
Sure, Keith.
Matt, could you take a minute or two just to talk about the traffic pattern and your thoughts on the way the front of the police station is separated with that walkway and how that's going to work? For obviously you're going to have customers, if you will, going to the front of the police station. Then you'll have town employees going to town hall, plus residents there also. Didn't know if you could just talk about that a little bit.
Yeah, that's not modeled the way that it's going to work out.
Okay.
I think we're the at the end. This is one of those moments where I wish I could point. At the end of the parking lot, the sort of for the town hall, I guess that'd be the northwest where that curb cut between the two islands comes down. That would probably continue out. What that pedestrian thoroughfare that we're showing there, that's more of a crosswalk than sidewalk condition. So traffic would be able to flow through that area. Yeah, that's one piece that we're still working out. As well as that sidewalk at the front of the police station would connect down as well to the south to the rest of the sidewalk area. One thing to note on vehicular circulation and security and things like that we're not showing is the police parking area in the back is likely going to be fenced in as well for security and for privacy, so the public isn't looking at unmarked cruisers and things like that, or accident vehicles that are back there for evidence. So there will be privacy fencing and a lockable, controllable gate at the entry of that. So more to come on that. We want to make sure that we're picking the right fence that's both aesthetically appropriate, but also offers that right security that we would need.
And I have one other. Mom, I'm going to ask you to jump in on this. This public area that's going along Maple Ave, is this the area that you were kind of talking about that we have on the agenda that the outdoor seating area addition? Has that been incorporated into your thought?
Yeah, that's basically what I was thinking, Pat. In my discussions with Keith and Kevin Mizikar, I think we were thinking it would be a little more treed than that. I mean, if Keith is okay with the amount of grass because of the maintenance, it'd probably be okay. Personally, I'd like to see a few more trees, like behind those picnic tables where it bumps back up to the road. I was thinking more of a grove effect, but no, I think it's good. If he's fine with the amount of grass, then and everybody else likes it, that's fine. I mean, that's basically what I was talking about.
And this is also our first pass for this grove design too, so they'll go through a little bit more development with the landscape architect as well.
Yeah, we tried trying to get this
very quickly. So it takes more time to model trees than it does grass.
And Mr. Chairman, Angela's on here too, and she may or may not back me up on this, but grass is much easier than all that mulch. So that would be a maintenance concern if that's all mulched area, more than the actual grass itself. But I also do think that to Mo's point about possibly more trees. But I understand your modeling part of it.
Okay. Well, I think that's, that will be developed as time. I just wanted to make sure that this was the general idea that we were talking about on the agenda item, and that it's been covered to a certain extent. Mo, are you happy with what you see thus far to this point?
On the seating design?
Yeah.
Yeah, sorry, I had to jump up for a minute. There's 5 grandkids over here. I do, but Pat, when's the appropriate time to ask some questions about the floor plan?
Fire away.
Matt, just a couple of questions. On the first floor, on the where you added the decon shower and the storage. I'm just wondering, does it make more sense to be on the opposite wall, because that shower is a good distance away from any other plumbing, it appears. I just wondered, for practicality of keeping the plumbing close, if the thing could be flipped. I think it would be closer to some plumbing that's in the cell area, but I mean, I don't know the design requirements that put it there.
I would assume that it wouldn't be too much of an issue plumbing wise to be out there, because we're probably going to have supply in that area for a hose bid. We'll have drainage and things like that. So I'm not as concerned about that, but we can certainly look at it. I just want to be careful that we don't create sort of a corridor situation going from the Sally port into the cell area. We want to sort of keep that flow of maintaining circulation as open as possible, but we've done it in the past, and we can certainly look at it and see how it looks with the chief.
If it works better the way it is for the chief for their operations, fine. I was just wondering. I have a question on the training room. The training room originally was envisioned as a public meeting room also. And when we were promoting the station, we were talking about extra meeting space. And I don't, maybe this is more of a question for the committee, but it seems like we were making this almost auditorium style where it's tiered, that we severely limited the functionality as a public space. I don't know when we should talk about that, but I think it's changed beyond what I had thought it was going to be. It might be the most appropriate for the police department, but as a public meeting space, I think it's going to be severely limited that way. But that's just a comment on that. I have just one other question. I printed out the plans, and I managed to overlay the second floor over the first floor. And I noticed where the locker rooms are on the second floor. You've got a lot of plumbing that's above the evidence room, and I know there might be design issues, but I'm wondering, unless you got some way to mitigate water going onto all that evidence if something ever happened, if the plumbing could be moved either to the other end, or somehow just removed from being over the evidence room and a little bit more over the cell area. Is that possible, Matt?
Yeah, point taken. We'll look into that.
Okay.
It's Chief here.
Thank you.
I think I'm sorry.
Go ahead, Chief.
What, Kevin?
Matt, can you hear me?
Yep.
I think our concern was moving it because we didn't want it to be over the communication center.
Yeah, we can look at, I mean, that is part of it, which we did make some modifications to accommodate, but, no matter what we do, avoiding plumbing in some of these critical areas is always going to be a concern. It's something we can certainly plan for to mitigate as best we can, as well as a few other things that we've been discussing. But let me get together with Brad offline. We have a meeting tomorrow afternoon, and we can discuss this a little further. And next time we all meet, we can present some options on ways we think we can achieve that.
Pat, can I just follow up?
Sure, Mo.
Kevin and Matt, I wasn't talking about moving the room itself. I was just wondering if the room could be configured so the plumbing was, I don't know, what is it? Further towards the Sally Port. I don't have my bearings. Like the plumbing be moved and the lockers just be flipped. It could, in the same space. I wasn't talking about moving it to another part of the building.
Yep. No, I understood that.
Okay.
Thank you. I'm all set, Pat.
All right, thanks, Mo. Anything else? Any other questions, comments, concerns from anybody on the committee? Or anybody
Mr.
else?
Chairman, I will just
Kristen, go ahead, please.
I'll just echo the comment Mr. DiPaolo made about the training room versus the conference space. If we could talk about that perhaps in our small group this Thursday or next Thursday about the chief's desires and the town's desires to use that as a, can we configure it any other way based upon the design or the needs to meet that? So it doesn't have to be necessarily talked about tonight, but perhaps an offline discussion of where that goes.
Yeah, I'll add it to the agenda for Thursday morning.
Great.
Okay, very good. Thank you. Okay, thank you. Anything else from anybody? All right, thanks, Matt and Tyler, for your work. Everything looks great. It looks like it's really coming together, and that's a whole lot of progress in about a month's time. So well done.
Thank you.
So I think we've covered everything in that area, which brings us to item number 9, which is review and approve the annual report. Kristen, do you want to take us through that?
Sure. So this might be new for some committee members, but those who have served on other boards and committees or other building committees may know that the town is required to prepare an annual report every year that gets published and then is generally handed out at the election and is available at town meeting. It talks about all the departments and boards and committees and what they've done in the past year. So I drafted the police station building committee annual report from the calendar year 2020, and Mr. Pitney made some comments. So before this goes to print, we just wanted to make sure that everyone on the committee was okay with the language that was submitted in the annual report.
Has everybody, I was on your drive, has everybody had a chance to look at that and review it? By the silence, I'm taking that as a no. It's basically a 2-page document. It's not a long report. Kristen, when does this have to be approved and done by?
I would say we should approve it this meeting unless we call for a special meeting because it does go to print fairly soon.
Okay.
If there's individual comments that are made, we could approve it with the caveat that if you and I review the individual comments and are okay with them, we could move forward.
How does everybody feel about that? I mean, I've looked it over pretty carefully. Kristen and I have gone back and forth a little bit on it. You incorporated in the final version, it looks like the comments that I made. You're comfortable with those?
Correct, yes.
Okay.
My trust is with Kristen and Mr. Pitney for sure. I'm sure they could draft a 2-page summary.
Everybody okay with that?
Yep, Mr. Pitney, I did take a look at it. I thought it was well done.
Thank you, Mr. Collins. I wish I could take more credit. I had very little to do with it. Those glasses work, so I appreciate her work on that. So,
Mr.
well,
Chairman, was she, Mr. Chairman,
go ahead, Mo.
was Kristen your ghostwriter? Was Kristen the ghostwriter?
Well, actually, she was everybody's ghostwriter because everybody on the committee, their name is on this report.
Thank you, Chris.
So we all get equal credit for that. All right.
I
So
think
a big
it
shout
looks
out.
good.
Yes, thank you.
Okay. So do we have a motion on that then?
So moved.
To approve?
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second.
Motion to approve.
We have a motion and a second to approve the police station municipal campus building committee annual report. When I call your name, please vote. Mo DiPaolo,
Aye.
Kristen Lass,
Aye.
Keith Baldinger,
Aye.
Chief Anderson,
Aye.
Justine Snyder,
Aye.
Patrick Collins,
Aye.
Joseph Morrow,
Aye.
and myself, aye. And again, that is unanimous, 8-0. Kristen, thank you for your work on this. I greatly appreciate it.
Absolutely. It was a joint effort from our admin staff as well, putting together the website and all of that. So it's a compilation.
Well, thank you to all. All right, well, that brings us to item 10, and I think we've kind of covered this. We're looking at March 1 for our next meeting. I believe that's a Monday, if I looked at my calendar correctly. Is everybody okay with that?
It is. I noted to the consultants in an email offline as this meeting was started, I failed to add reviewing and acting to sign the contract documents for Tecton and CMS. So I will confer with them tomorrow if they're okay with holding that to March 1st. If not, there might be a need for a special committee meeting to review and approve those contract documents.
Okay, very good. They weren't ready for approval tonight, though, anyway. Is that
They are
correct?
ready. I failed to put them on. The contract document for the CM at risk firm was not ready for this evening.
All right. Okay, well, hopefully we can hold that off, but if not, stay tuned. We still have the hold on the 22nd. Jan, so if we need to meet at that, we can still do that. So Alex, if we could keep that meeting in a hold position for the 22nd and see where we are with the contracts. If that can be helped. Oh, go ahead.
Does the full committee need to vote on the contract for the CM?
The majority does.
So then we will need a meeting sooner because we need to, in order to get the RFP in, we need to send out the contract. And if we don't have an approved contract, we can't send it. So if we're anticipating getting the approved CM contract in by the end of the week, we'll need to meet like Monday to get everybody at least to just approve that so we can send it to the CMs. Otherwise, we can't continue with the RFP process.
So we need a meeting. Kevin, you're saying we need a meeting by next Monday?
Well, I'm saying that we'll need a meeting as soon as we get the approval from town council on the CM contract. So if that happens tomorrow and we could just everybody could just jump on a call like Thursday, the sooner we can get it to them, the better. We're talking about sending somebody like a 500-page document, and we're expecting them to give us a proposal back in 2 weeks. They're all going to ask for further extensions.
Okay. Well, we want to.
Especially because what we're hearing, or what I guess we heard from town council, is that this is a new DCAM contract of some sort, so they've needed a lot of time to go through it. And if we're one of the first communities sending out this new style contract, I think that there's going to be a lot of questions.
Okay. Well, with that, Kristen, we think they'll be ready tomorrow, right?
Right. So I would say if Monday is a holiday for town government, so perhaps we could post a meeting for 4:30 on Thursday, the 11th.
Does anybody have a conflict there? I'm good with that date.
It could literally be probably a 10-minute meeting, Pat, unless there's a lot of questions.
Of course.
Everybody look at it. Can we approve it? Yep. And then everybody's off.
Yeah, one agenda item. Is there anybody who cannot make it on Thursday?
Mr. Chairman,
Yes, Mo.
there's a possibility I might not be able to, but I don't think that's that big a deal.
Okay.
If I'm not there, there's enough people to vote on it.
Yeah, we'd like to have you there, Mo, but this is something we need. So as long as if we have a quorum, then I think we're going to move forward with Thursday.
Right.
So it will be to review and approve the contracts for CMS, review and approve the contract amendment for Tecton, and to review and approve the contract that will go out with the RFP.
Very good, Kristen. And we have time to get that posted and
Yeah,
out.
we'll post it midday tomorrow, and we'll have the 48 hours. I'll work with Alex on that tomorrow.
Okay, very good. All right, so let's plan with that. Doesn't sound like we'll need the 22nd then. And then we'll go with March 1 as our meeting for CM selection. Okay? All right, very good. Well, with that, thank you everybody for your time. I know we're a little bit longer tonight, but I think we got a lot accomplished. So I thank you all. And do we have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second.
So moved.
A motion and second to adjourn. Mo, how do you vote? You want to go see the
Aye.
guy? All right, good. Kristen?
Aye.
Keith?
Aye.
Chief? Justine?
Aye.
Patrick?
Aye.
Joe?
Aye.
And myself, aye. Thank you very much, everybody. We'll see you Thursday.